Well, how time does fly, especially it would seem in the world of Gran Turismo 7, because yesterday, I believe, marks a year already since the game came out. Of course, I did not have an early access copy as some other channels did. I mean, I can't possibly imagine why Polyphony wouldn't want me, of all people, to have an early access copy to give my thoughts on before the game goes on sale. Can't possibly imagine why that happened, but I did play it from day one with the rest of the community, and I think that kind of ties into why many of you do enjoy watching my content, which is that I don't toe any kind of company line. I couldn't care less what Polyphony or Kaz or anyone thinks of me. I will say it as it is, no matter how many people like to yak that yak on GT Planet, Twitter, Reddit, wherever else the little ghouls like to congregate. I'll keep saying it as it is, and if I see something that I believe is wrong with the game, I'll say it as such. And if somebody tells me to be quiet about it, I'll say it twice as loud. And over the course of the last year, we've had some ups and downs in Gran Turismo 7, and I've always called it as it is. So now's the time to take stock. How has it been so far? For those who, like me, played from day one. I'm also curious for those who maybe started their Gran Turismo 7 journey more recently. Well, I'm sorry, because you would have had to log in and do a hell of a lot of updates before you could play the game, but I could see it being an enjoyable experience if you can bypass a lot of those, get it all done at once, and then get into this much larger game for those of us who play it and have these drip feed things every month. And you cannot talk about a Gran Turismo game these days without talking about updates. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is with many games. Gone is the era of having a finished product. What a mythical idea. And yet so many of us were never thinking back then, you know what, I really wish Gran Turismo 4 had a patch. It didn't need it. It was a game. You bought a game, you had a game, you played it till you were finished with it, and then you moved on. There was nothing wrong with that. There wasn't this artificial need to stretch something out for the sake of either earning more money through microtransactions or just, wanting to stretch the life of the game artificially, which is really what updates start to feel like. Updates are not inherently bad, and there are certain types of update that I actually support. Sophie is a recent prime example of something which I think is fantastic. It is a work in progress, it's super early days, so it's justified in being bad. It's actually far better than it easily could have been, and I'm not going to get super into that because I did a dedicated video just about Sophie. But beyond that, I think that bug fixes, patches, rule changes, these kind of updates are absolutely fine. I have no issue with those whatsoever and probably never will, because those do improve the quality of life within the game, the actual way that the game performs. That's essential. What I do take issue with, and again, this is the part that you have to talk about, certainly in this game and in sport, maybe not so much in GT6, because there weren't quite as many new vehicles, for example, added. GT5 maybe, but certainly in the last couple of games. Adding content over time is one of the biggest things that pops up in the Gran Turismo timeline, and one of the main issues that some of us, including myself, have is that even on occasions when these vehicles are cool and fresh and new, December, for example, was a great patch, the Chiron, which I was looking forward to, the C8 Corvette Stingray, which a ton of people really wanted, and now nowhere near as many people are talking about. Surprise, surprise, now everyone's just moved on to the Lexus LFA instead, and the same thing will happen when that arrives in the game. People are fickle. They always have the mentality of, oh, I didn't want that one, I wanted this other car instead. When are we going to get that one? And I'm sure there are plenty of people who would like to think that I have that kind of mentality as well. Whereas in actual fact, if you watch my coverage of updates, even in the ones that haven't been as good, I don't tend to criticise the cars that much. I'm actually a proponent of stuff like Vision Gran Turismo cars, and I always try to be as positive as I can, even in my individual reviews of them. It really does have to be a particularly bad car for me to dog on it. Something like a Chrome Line Jag in Gran Turismo 6 or a Chrome Line Audi R8. True trash in the purest sense. In the recent games, I don't recall any cars really standing out like that. To me, it's more the concept of, well, as I alluded to earlier on, artificially stretching out the game. Now, one of the problems with a video like this is because it's condensing an entire year into one video of my thoughts, there are so many tangents I could go on right now, especially when I'm just talking to a microphone with no script, as I never use a script anyway. And of course, I could easily get lost in the weeds, but we're going to try and keep it concise and try and keep it to the overall thoughts. And this, of course, as well as every other thought really, but in particular, this is where you guys really come in. Your experience with the game. What has been your journey? Are you someone who's been completely happy with the whole process? Have you loved everything? There are people out there who really genuinely do absolutely adore GT7 and consider it to be their favourite game. Same thing happened with Sport. There were people who absolutely loved it. And for people who have maybe, that's the first one they've played, you could understand that. But for some people, even not. Even if they played 5 and 6 before, they may still love Sport or 7. That's great, and I'm genuinely happy for those people if it's really a good all-round game for you. But for some others, maybe you played it for a very short time and completely dropped off the radar. I know that for some people you only check in when I do videos about the new updates to see what's being added and whether or not it seems worth it to you to come back to the game. There is a substantial portion of people who only watch the videos for that. There are other people who, like myself, still play it all the time in one form or another, but have a mix of positives and negatives. That's the way I always try to be, because to me, even in my least liked game of the whole franchise, Sport, there were still positive and negative things to say. And I will go on the record right now and say I think that, at least for me, there is no question that 7 is a better game than Sport. Some people will prefer Sport. I think one or two have. I have seen that said. But for me, I definitely prefer this game overall. Sport was just something so different, and this game learned some positive things from Sport, carried some things over, but definitely at least tried to have a bit more of a more traditional Gran Turismo experience, and for that I do applaud it. The weird thing is, though, and this is where the rocky road and the roller coaster analogies come in, is that there really does seem to be some kind of internal struggle at Polyphony, or maybe with even higher ups than Polyphony, wherein Kaz has a vision, but then there are other aspects of the game which seem to fly in the face of what Kaz would want. Not that I know him personally, so of course it's conjecture, but when you look at someone like Kaz, someone who's so obsessed with having this realistic, fun, enjoyable, like pixelated version of real-life racing, and he loves that side of things. He loves real racing. He loves having the live esports and creating race drivers and putting VR in, and even holding back a Tourist Trophy sequel, as we've talked about, because he doesn't think that rigs are good enough yet. These very clearly paint a certain picture of the kind of person Kaz is. I honestly don't think Kaz has that much interest, or it doesn't seem to me like he would have that much interest in what cars are going to be added this month. It just doesn't seem to me like that would be high on his priority list. That feels more like something that is made for the community, almost just to keep people at like an idle speed over the game, just to keep the engine ticking over for the community, something to do, something to talk about, something to enjoy at least once every month. And this is the entire reason why I started doing the Special Projects car packs, which it shouldn't surprise me, I guess, but it still manages to seemingly fool people every month into thinking that this is a new actual pack. Literally in like the first 3 seconds of every one of those videos, it says that I'm creating these cars, as a special projects edition for the community, and it's not the official update. And the whole point of those was to give those of us who want to be playing the game more to do at the start of every month, having this feeling of something fresh and different, something new to try. Of course, within my limited ability of creating cars based on vehicles that we already have, and of course I can't bring new circuits or anything to the game, but this timeline that has happened in Sport and 7, wherein each month rises up to the point of anticipation of an update, then drops afterwards, then rises back up to the next one and drops. It's this ebb and flow every month, in and out. That simply, and you can say this is nostalgia, it is just a fact that did not happen with any of the first 4 games in the franchise. There was no up and down from month to month with Gran Turismo 1, 2, 3, 4, and you could even say 5 and 6, even though they had updates, they really didn't need them for the most part. 6 certainly didn't. There were only a few extra cars, as I recall, and I think 1 or 2 circuits, but there was already quite a lot in the game, not so much in terms of career mode, but certainly in terms of just actual physical circuits and cars, wherein you got into the game. If you enjoyed it, you played it. If you didn't, you left. There wasn't this manufactured feeling of trying to claw people back every month with this drip feed of stuff. A drip feed which seems all the more bottle-fed and bottlenecked and throttled when we see something like the leaked data mining list for circuits, many of which have happened now. For cars, many of which have happened now, and many are still to come. Again, the problem with Polyphony is, and I think I've mentioned this so many times, they always seem to be making the next thing instead of actually making the thing that they're doing now, reach its full potential. And I feel like that didn't used to be the way it was. And maybe this is an inherent problem with the acceleration of change from technology, but if you look at Gran Turismo 2 and compare it to 3, it is wildly different. New console, new level of graphics, totally different physics, totally different cars. But then if you compare 3 to 4, it's a massive jump again. But then after 4, the game didn't jump as much. Sure, the graphics got better, the game got better and worse in some ways depending on who you ask, but what really caused the pivot? If you really boil it down, what ultimately the biggest change was between 1, 2, 3, 4 and then 5, 6, Sport and 7 is one thing: online. In the first 4 games, online was nothing that we ever gave a thought to. In 4, it was barely even there. Then in 5 onward, it became the core of what made so many people enjoy the game so much. And of course, playing with real people is a massive reason why many people play games so much and enjoy them so much. If something like Halo or Call of Duty were just a single-player game, barely anyone would be playing it. So of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is, it's almost like Polyphony always has this reactive way of developing a game. They look at what the players seem to like and then they'll just push that and they'll push the hell out of it. Kind of like on YouTube, you watch one random video and then it's all you get in your recommended. It seems that Polyphony's doing the same kind of thing, almost just pushing, oh, you like online? Well, let's make sport all online. You like esports? You like the Nismo Academy? Let's make it all esports and all FIA, and we're going to make the next Stig. Like, so many of us couldn't care less about being a real racing driver, but Kaz likes it, so by damn he's going to be pushing it. And in 7, I thought, and I was looking forward so much to seeing this return to form, this jumping back into, sure, having the online stuff, sure, let the people who want it have the esports, but having like a proper career mode again, bringing back some returning faces. There was some people who had ridiculous expectations. Oh, there's going to be 1,000 cars and all this and all that. No, I never expected that, and I never encouraged anyone to either. I always had reservations, but I was hopefully optimistic. When the game came out, I was initially impressed. It looked good. And then so quickly it seemed to devolve. It's why this story of Gran Turismo 7's first year has been so rocky. It's so much of a roller coaster with many things to praise and many things to criticize. And unfortunately, because it's 2023 and people seem to be literally incapable of having 2 thoughts in their mind at the same time, they have to be completely binary. Either they completely agree with everything you've ever said, or you are the literal devil. It means that people are just totally closed-minded as soon as you mention anything they don't want to hear. That's a shame, because those people are truly, honestly, only screwing over themselves. I think that it has been a very rocky first year. There have been some great things. Some of the cars have been great. Some of the tracks. Road Atlanta was a fantastic one for me, for example. Recently with Sophie, as I said. So there really have been shining moments, and for the future, a lot of those really do hold a lot of promise. Road Atlanta, I hope, comes back. Sophie certainly will be. And for the moment, Sophie, I believe, is a limited thing anyway. For many people, VR was a huge thing. But for other ways, I don't know, it's just a weird way that this game has been released. In many ways, I shouldn't be surprised, because Sport had a similar thing where there wasn't a career mode to begin with, and then things were added here and there down the line. But I guess overall that's it for my thoughts, without rambling on all day long, about the first year of the game. And any of these individual points I've already made their own videos on. And even if you look at the positive versus negative outlooks on the game, there are so many people who would love to say that, I only make videos because criticizing the game gets more views, or because it's more clickable, or that I'm blowing it out of proportion how many people dislike the game compared to how many people are still playing the game. But if you look at the actual numbers, one prime example, I made a video about things that I believe Polyphony could do better. And then I made a video completely the opposite of all the things I think they've done well. Will the views speak for themselves? They're both similar, but the one about the negatives does have more views. And I didn't manufacture it that way. I produced both videos in the same style. They were both just as earnest, and I meant everything that I said in every one of them. And yet it's not just me, clearly, who feels that way. swinging more toward the negative. There is a difference, though. There is a certain point where you can just be cynical, and that's something which I don't do. I think some people may misunderstand what I do as being cynical. I criticise the game, and I criticise Polyphony, and I criticise Kaz and whoever else because I love the game so much. I criticise it because I've seen how good it can be, because I grew up playing it in an era where updates weren't even a thing, and we never wanted them. It was just a complete game, and if you liked it, you liked it. If you didn't, you didn't. Nowadays, it just doesn't work that way anymore, and although I know it's never going to get back to how it was, and some would argue it never should, the fact does still remain that even though you don't have to be tied to the past, unless you don't learn from it, you are doomed to failure. That applies to everything in life. And what we already know from Kaz, because he himself has said it, is he doesn't consider the past. He didn't even know people still played the older games until he saw some of the Nations Cup folks who were racing there at the live events literally playing the older games between sessions. He was amazed that these younger folks played games that came out sometimes when they were babies or before they were even born. That's concerning to me, because sure, looking to the future is great, but if you forget where you came from, forget the core of what made this brand as popular as it is, well, sure, bringing in new faces is good, but it means you're going to alienate a lot of people who would otherwise put way more money into your franchise than newer upstarts would. Many of us older folks who have been playing the game for longer, even people who aren't old like myself but have been playing it for many years, we are more than happy to buy a new console just to play Gran Turismo. I certainly did. But I think there are definitely things that Polyphony could learn that they just seem like they're not that really interested in learning from. And of course, a lot of this is caused by the same problem that I bring up a lot about this game, which is that we don't know what Polyphony thinks because they don't communicate with anyone at all, beyond just telling us about updates about 24 hours before they're going to come out anyway. So much of this could be solved by Polyphony actually talking to their own community more, and the fact that it can be done and that other gaming companies do it goes to show that it can be done. I would absolutely love to be someone who liaises between Polyphony and the community, and I know that I would be the last person they would ever want to do that because they think I'd probably always put a negative spin on it. The reality is, if you look at most of my coverage of updates and certainly my reviews of the cars and tracks in them, I am overwhelmingly always trying to be as positive as I can. It's just those one or two videos here and there that tend to be more negative, such as the updates or whatever else, that really stand out to people. I'd love to do that job. It's the only job I would ever want to do with Polyphony, because I think I could do a hell of a lot for them. Because look at the videos that I make about new updates and stuff. It's what most of you watch the most of. And if nothing else, I'm pretty good at getting people hyped about a game which they don't even play for the rest of the month. So if even I, somebody considered to be the person I am in the community, can get that level of hype simply by doing what? Communicating. Then if only Polyphony would either do it themselves or get somebody who actually knows how to do it without coming off just like a company man. Because my videos certainly don't come off like that, and they still get people hyped, even in my own little borderline cynical community that we have here on the channel. But overall, that's it for my thoughts on the first year of the game, both in terms of the core game itself and my overall thoughts beyond just, what are the graphics like? And here's looking forward to the future as well. The video will end up being way too long if I talk at length about predictions and stuff for the coming year, and it seems a little bit irrelevant when we already do have the leaked data mining list, and of course with other vehicles in there as well that do continue to pop up that weren't on the list. Doubtless that'll happen with some circuits as well, but if you guys do want to put some predictions and that in the comments down below, as well as your other thoughts, absolutely do so. And of course, here's looking to another year, and of course, as well on top of all of this, naturally I will be featuring any new interesting information about Gran Turismo 7 as we move forward, as well as whatever game comes out next. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.